and we move at light speed. Last of a giant breed, my Akis move at light speed.
I can feel eyes on me everywhere I go. Not paranoid or conceited, but
telephones, telegraph, radio, television, all this network of electronic devices is extending our nervous system in the same way as a wheel extends our feet. But consider, the extension of the nervous system electronically means the end of privacy. The inconvenience of everybody being able to barge in on us by telephone. Double that inconvenience, treble it, with the inconveniences you can imagine for a future technology, where you would not only have the sound of the person's voice on the telephone, but also their visual image. It can be so worked out technically that everybody can be equipped with a little gadget about the size of a pocket watch. On one side there is a dialing system, and on the other side there is a little TV screen. And everybody in the world who possesses one of these things has a number. And if you ring it and the number doesn't answer, your friend's dead. Imagine. Because you can't not answer. That would be unethical. That would be inhuman. That would be to advertise yourself as dead. You must answer. Everybody is in touch with everybody else in such a way that it reveals their inmost thoughts, and there is no longer any individuality. No privacy. Eventually, after attempting to control your thoughts, you would say, to hell with it. I'll think just the way I feel like thinking. Now, what we're afraid of, you see, is that some power will control all of us by this method. But that power must be the one individual whose thoughts are not public. If the super controller has his thoughts public, then he can't be in that position. If everybody is circuited, so his private thoughts are public knowledge to all his friends and relations and to the controller, but the controller's thoughts are not public knowledge, then you have a system which is a real dangerous kind of dictatorship. In this way, we feel that our individuality depends on our privacy. Insofar, in other words, as electronics is making everybody available to everybody else, we are discovering through technology a state of affairs which in fact has existed all the time. The first thing that human beings created on this planet to communicate with distant points were roads. In the 19th century, we began to go beyond roads because we discovered rails, then wires. The economic world became a network of roads, rails, and wires. But now the fascinating thing is we are beginning to witness a disappearance of all those methods of communication. The railways and the roads have gone to the airplane, and the wires have gone to radio and television. And you will see that as human beings become more technically efficient, that the scars of technology will disappear from the face of the earth. The moment that everybody has his personal hoppycopter, there will be no further need of the freeway. And the freeway will break up, and grass and moss will grow over it, because nobody's traveling it. And it'll disappear back into the landscape. Hooray. And these ridiculous automobiles, in which we each travel around and make a nuisance of ourselves, that they will vanish, because they simply are not technologically efficient. Because as a matter of fact, if we couple the science of television with the science of laser beams, we can get a three-dimensional image of anybody we'd like to see right here in this room. In other words, you can contact your friends in New York, and you can assemble them all together in laser beam images by, as it were, dialing each one and say, can you come on, can you come on, can you come on? Then we can have a laser beam created three-dimensional image of anybody you want to talk to sitting right in this room. So that the same concept.
This is old technology, just to let you know. This technology was mastered back in the 70s, 60s. Before I was born. I was born in the 80s. I'm an 80s baby. And in the early 90s, when I was living in Pennsylvania in a very small town that barely has anybody in it right now, had an arcade in the pizza shop. Now, this is when arcades were dying, and people were selling the machines left and right, and people in like pizza shops and pool halls and things like that, you know, pool halls were the arcades and stuff. But then that's whenever you started noticing them in bars and everything. There'd be like one or two of these games, these big old stand-up box games. I know some of you old heads probably worked on those. I know somebody that still builds them for collectors. There was a game where it was literally this. It had a grid screen, a glass table, and the hologram would come out. The whole game, the whole screen was this hologram. Now, I'm a child running around this little town, walking in a pizza shop, grabbing a slice of pizza to go back to the woods to go play with my friends, building forts and shit. And as we sit and wait, I'm staring at a video game with this exact same thing. Also, what does it say? What does it always say? What do people always say? That they're trying to copy. Who are they trying to copy? Who are they trying to be like? What are they trying to be like? You need some crazy glasses to see? Oh, I got that for you. What else they trying to do? You know? Here it is.
Need for an electrical gadget.
Because this is mainly talking about communication. Now, if we understand that in communication, that we can already talk to each other. There's been a couple people that have been in contact with me and is very surprised whenever they figure out how strong I am. Because I don't play no games. It's a very true story, brothers and sisters. They want to mock this stuff. Now, if they're trying to do it, listen, if they're trying to do it, that means it's already been done. And that also, and why are they doing it? It's because they're trying to stay ahead of the game. And who's always ahead of the game? My father? Who they always trying to get ahead of? They want to know your thoughts because we already know theirs. And they're behind the game. Brothers and sisters, I'm not talking about an intuitive feeling of knowing something about somebody. I'm talking about knowing exactly what somebody is saying about you the second they say it. I'm talking about standing in a room, having an issue with somebody, and then you turning around ready to pop them in the mouth because of what you just heard them say, and everybody in the room is like, yo, they didn't say anything. And then an hour later, person comes to you and goes, yo, I'm really sorry, blah, blah, blah. I didn't really mean any of it. Because, you know, there's another ability that they won't be able to master. Some people call it hexing. Some people call it karma. Me, I call it instant karma. And it happens in 3 stages.
By telepathy. Because you see, what all technology is doing, it's not creating a new situation. It is discovering. All around the world, you see this recurring theme in different cultures, and it's described in different ways, but exactly the same in theme. We have a force, an expression of this Wetiko that takes a reptilian form. And the cultures around the world, again and again and again, when they're doing their creation myths, then some kind of reptilian, lizard-like, snake-like entities are described. So if you take the biblical version, you have Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And Adam and Eve are symbolic of, first of all, what humans were like before what became known as the fall. What the hell was the fall? The way I've seen this is that there was once not something that you'd call human. It was a state of consciousness that was experiencing a world, a frequency band that was like the one we're experiencing, but on a much higher level of awareness, consciousness, frequency. So things weren't happening in dense matter and low, slow frequencies. They were happening on a high frequency. Things were much more ethereal. And that, I think, is what's described as this paradise that went before. And so Adam and Eve were cast out of paradise. What does that mean, I would suggest? They left that frequency level where what we now call humans were experiencing. A world of love, of joy, of happiness, of all the things that happen when you get into high frequency states where so much more is possible. And they fell, the fall was down the frequencies into dense matter. And the villain in the Garden of Eden that is said to have been part of this, or central to this, is the snake. People have to think symbolically. I mean, this is not a snake that can talk. This is symbolic of this reptilian group, not just one person, this reptilian group, these reptilian gods as they were perceived. And they fell down the frequencies, Adam and Eve, symbolic of what's now humanity, because they gained the knowledge of good and evil. What is good and evil? It's polarity. It's the polarity that we see in our reality now. That level that we fell from was oneness, it was unity. And we fell into the knowledge of good and evil, the knowledge of polarity, which is what this world is. And my view, and it has been for a lot of years now, is that what Genesis is describing is the takeover of human perception by this reptilian force. And the God at the start of Genesis that is creating the world is actually an amalgamation to deceive and misdirect of the gods, the reptilian gods. And what's being described is not the creation of the world, but the creation of the simulation, the matrix. And so when we hear lines like, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, I say what's being described is electromagnetic light, which is basically what this simulation is. And I said just after the turn of the millennium that this is a simulation, and the walls of it, certainly at our level anyway, are the speed of light, which is not the fastest speed possible. That's a joke. We're dealing with all possibility here. That's the fastest speed possible. It's a joke. It's the speed of the matrix of the simulation. And there was an article in Scientific American in April of this year where some academic said, we live in a simulation and the walls of the simulation are the speed of light. And he was relating the speed of light in simulation terms to the processing speed. Because what is physics? What is the law of physics, as we call it? It's whatever the creator of the simulation decided it was going to be. What are, in effect, the laws of physics of computer games? They're whatever the creator of the game decides they're going to be. But as this article pointed out, you can create the laws within your game, but you're still going to be limited by the processing speed you're dealing with. And that's why the speed of light is this faster speed. That's why when people have near-death experiences, they leave the body, which is locking us into the simulation through the five senses. And they experience a totally different version of physics, where past, present, and future all kind of happen at once, in the same now. But within the simulation, we have time, we have all these other illusions, which are the creation of the simulation. So you had this treasure trove of documents that were found at Nagamadi in 1945, about 75 miles north of Luxor in Egypt, which was an earthen jar of the writings of the Gnostic people. And it's reckoned that they were put in that jar 400 AD, something like that. And about a fifth of these writings were about what they called archons, which is Greek for rulers, who were manipulating human society. And what they say in these writings is that this world is a fake world. It's a fake reality created by this archontic force to enslave humanity in an illusion. I went through all of them, and what you see, they're describing a virtual reality universe. That's what they're describing in their own language, what we would call today virtual reality. One of the great things today is that because of the technological advancement, so-called, we've now got the analogies and the experience of virtual reality to actually describe what this reality is.